Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We provide fan-oriented analytic discussions on a variety of animated shows, movies, and anime, currently featuring Steven Universe and Miraculous Ladybug, among others. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Delaney Stovall.
Yo.
Today, Delaney and I will be wrapping up our Volume 3 coverage of RWBY. We previously covered RWBY every week here on the Overly Animated Podcast, and we will presumably continue to do so for Volume 4. But Volume 3 is over, Season 3 is over, sad. And so,
where's the soundtrack?
Yeah, where's the soundtrack? 1. And 2, in this podcast, we will be looking back on the season as a whole. Frequently throughout the season, we referenced kind of viewing these episodes on their own, and then kind of saying like, yes, I don't think this, especially for these early episodes in the season, a lot of people were very down on them and saying it's going to be so terrible in the context of the season. And I said, yeah, but I'm trying to just evaluate it on its own, and I kind of liked it on its own. So now's the time to evaluate, see whether it all worked out from a season-long perspective. We're going to give our episode rankings for the season, which is a thing I'm very big on, and just kind of wrap up our coverage of RWBY. I know a lot of you guys are listening to it. Thank you very much for listening to every week about RWBY. Please check us out for other shows. And yeah, I just sad that season of RWBY's over. It's probably going to be quite a while before the next one, although I think that they're going right into production, so it might only be a year as opposed to over a year, which was last time. So let's but for understandable reasons, of course, let's get into this. So we're very up and down, I think, on RWBY this season, right? Like,
yeah,
it kind of, in the beginning, we were kind of like, okay, there's a decent premiere, then there's a string of episodes that were kind of bad, and we said they're kind of bad. And to be fair, a lot of people said they're bad.
Yes.
Like
it's not just us.
Really not just us. And then we got into the middle of the season, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We start getting into more plotty things. People are very excited to actually have plot happening. Spoilers for the entire season, by the way. And mixed results in the middle of the season, and then we get into the end arc with, again, mixed results. So I think like what you're going to see is that we're going to really complain a lot about the overall plot lines this season. I think even more so than seasons 1 and 2, which were a little bit all over the place. I think season 1 was kind of focused in exposition. Season 2 was doing a lot of things, but it like, here's the thing: the season was trying to be more ambitious narratively. So obviously it has a higher things to live up to, right?
There's a larger distance for it to fall.
Oh, and speaking of fall, awful. Yeah. Okay. So, it's like season 2. Season 1 was exposition, and I loved it for that. Season 2 kind of was just doing a lot of stuff, and like when we got to the plot at the end of the season, it wasn't really related to anything that happened previously, but that's okay because it wasn't promising anything. Like, there's no natural way to wrap up that season. So what ended up happening was kind of fine. And I do think the season 2 finale worked really well. But this season, we were promising a lot of stuff was going to happen in the last few episodes. And whether it happens or not, I think we're going to discuss now. I guess let's start off with this. We had like episodes 1 to 5, and once we got to fall, episode 6, we actually try to start getting the plot. We get to episodes 1 to 5, and the big question is, how are these episodes going to play in the context of the season? These episodes very focused on the tournament, on individual character arcs. I think in retrospect, the Weiss and Winter stuff holds up very well.
Yes.
But I think basically everything else from episodes 1 to 5 does not.
Agree.
So, like, here's let's take episode 5, Never Miss a Beat. I got a few asks about that one, saying I really didn't like this one. There's disappointingly no plot. It was just kind of dumb, and we were both like, this was a good episode. It's nice. The fight was nice. Looking back as the season overall, this episode is worse than looking at it on its own.
Yes,
because it's just nonsense, and it has nothing to do with anything.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, just all the first few episodes are just...
The problem is the tournament had no payoff. That's the big problem. There's no reason to have these tournament fights.
It was literally wasting time until we got to the point where Yang, like, broke, air quotes, Mercury's leg.
Every everything seems like a waste of time until that moment at the end of episode 6.
It's so not a payoff. Like, we have these, and honestly, like, well, the reason we liked Never Miss a Beat was because that was the only fight that, like, was interesting up to that point. Like, we had so many, like, we were so tired of the tournament fights because one, like, we literally got one Team RWBY fight. And the rest of the time, it was like these characters we don't really care about, and these teams we don't really care about. Heck, there are teams that aren't from Beacon. They're like from other schools, and it's like we don't care.
It's like, will Team Funky pay off? Will Team Frat Boys pay off? Whatever they're called, right? Like, and they don't.
No, they don't. They like, yes, they're at the end of the season and like they're fighting, but it's like I literally don't care who they are. And again, we have stated this multiple times. The male characters might as well be cardboard cutouts. They don't need to be here. Like, they literally don't do anything.
Now, so eventually we're going to get to what do we think of the season overall. That's like the big question. And I think we need to discuss to get there. But basically where I'm starting out is, for a lot of the reasons discussed here, and especially when we talk about the maidens, as a whole, this is the worst season of RWBY.
Yes.
And I don't think it's particularly close.
I don't really. This isn't, and I think that most of the fandom would agree that this isn't really up for debate either.
Well,
like, this is very
no, I think you'll find people defending it. A lot of people liked what happened at the end. And
the end was good, but I don't really think you can. I really don't think one episode can redeem an entire.
A lot of people also did not like season 1. I mean, I think that nothing here was worse than the John arc in season 1.
Agree.
But that was only a few episodes. The rest of season 1 was spectacular, I think. So,
yes.
I mean, spectacular is a strong word. It was very good, I think, for a new show. And just overall, the season, as we're going to discuss, basically nothing works as a cohesive unit. And like,
well, it's like, it's really hard for me. It was really hard for me to do these rankings. Like, we have our lists, and I don't really have that many episodes that are like bad, but the thing is, like, they don't work as a season. Like, yes, the episodes are fine, but like they don't work together at all in any sort of like way that like makes sense. Like, that's the thing, like, I have these episodes and some of them I have ranked kind of high because I enjoyed them and I thought they were good episodes, but like put together it doesn't matter because you can't put 6 good episodes together and hope it's a good season. Like book 3 of Korra, which we have talked about on numerous occasions as being quite easily the best season of television ever, and it's not just because every single episode is amazing, it's because every single episode is amazing.
Preface that point, we think that a lot of people, once you get outside of the core fandom, people get much less high in the show anyway.
Yes. But like, so we think that, and it's like, and it's not just because every episode's great, every episode is great and it works.
So okay, so if we're going to talk about book 3 of Korra, I think that's a season that's stronger also a season that's stronger individually than as a unit, but as a unit it does work.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we have all these great episodes, but then they also work together as a season.
Yeah, they're not like the best thing ever as a season. Like, like the villain plot is not the best thing ever if you look back on it overall. But so
there's actually like some sort of cohesion to the.
There's some cohesion to the entire season, which lacks here. So one thing we should note is that neither Delaney nor I have gone back and watched the season as a whole as a 2.5 hour block. Both of us have done that that's how you watched the show originally, and I went back and watched the other seasons like that, and we both think that basically seasons 1 and 2 work really well as a unit. I rewatched all the show before the season, and I rewatched season 1, and I skipped the John arc, and season 1 was great. I did skip it. Like, I genuinely did not want to watch it again. It's so bad. But and then I rewatched all of season 2, and I think season 2 works a lot better as a unit because it's just a lot of cool stuff happening. It's got a really nice tone and stuff, theme and stuff like that. Not theme, like whatever. And we haven't done this for this season, so we really don't know. But I think it is valid to evaluate it just looking back now. And basically the refrain with RWBY is like, it works really well in like movie style. That's kind of what we've always thought about seasons 1 and 2. And I think that it's not going to be the case this season.
No.
I think kind of the first few episodes might be okay together because it's just a lot of tournament fights.
It's just the tournament.
And that's like okay, but then you get into the second half and it's just it's none of here's the thing. Even when we're talking about the tournament so far, that's not even the main problem with the season.
No.
The problem is the maidens. That's the big problem. Like Fall, if you listen to our podcast on it, I was so angry at that episode, and it's just even worse in retrospect. Like, they do nothing with that plot.
Nope.
And
Not a thing. And then suddenly at the end we have this new thing, and it's like, what are
they
we
don't
doing?
even, if RWBY becomes a maiden at the end, then it'd be slightly better. Like it
Yeah.
would be, okay, it'd be significantly better. It still wouldn't be good, but it would be a lot better. Like
Like
you can't just
honestly, like what they're doing is like there are so many epic fantasy series I've tried to start, but then you read the first chapter and it's literally like the season, and you're like, none of this makes sense. And then you close the book and you put it away. But you have no desire to read that book because nothing makes sense. That's what's going on. Like there's too many elements going on that don't like you can't introduce fantasy elements and then just try and let them stand because they're fantasy elements. Now you don't have to like explain them in detail, but you can't just throw out like 5 different fantasy elements, not explain any of them, especially when none of them work together.
now look, I think that a lot of the maiden stuff, a lot of our finale stuff will, looking back, as once we get apparently once we reach the end of the show in season 30,
Yeah, in
then
season 400.
which is coming from them, not me, is
Like it's real, guys.
that's not happening, but that's what they said.
That's what they say.
Once they have a 20 season plan or something like that.
20
Once
years from now, when
once
RWBY's
20
over.
years from now when RWBY's over, I think this season will play better in the context of the whole show. I hope
Yeah,
so. I hope
yeah.
they go somewhere
Well,
with maidens
it's
next
just
season.
like with Korra, book 1 functions very interestingly in the art and the entire show of as Korra's character.
Yeah, and also like book two's plot is a little more interesting from the perspective of of the entire series, I
Yeah,
think.
as especially from like because when you look at it's Avatar, it's not like yes, it was advertised in like other countries as the Legend of Aang, but it's about being the Avatar and like Aang saving the world. Korra is just about Korra and who she is as a person, and that's what's really interesting when you look over the 4 seasons is what Korra becomes and how she changes as a person, and it's amazing.
And it's not a good analogy because there's no character arcs in there's not really character arcs in the show.
Oh, I just meant like when you look back.
But yeah, it's like look back and some things are better, right? So
Yes.
I think that this season will make sense in the context of the series. They're obviously going for a bigger vision here, and I
But right
understand.
now,
If that's your criticism of what we're saying, that's not what I'm arguing, right? Like here's what me and Delaney are saying. We are evaluating Volume 3 as a unit. That's it. Now you could say that's not a valid way to. That's you shouldn't be doing that. But then my question is like, what are we supposed to be evaluating? Like, just we should wait until the end of the series to say anything about the show. Like, I don't think that's how TV shows work. Like, I think basically every TV
because
show,
we're not actually going to get to season 20.
yeah, but also even if they ended in 7 seasons or whatever, every TV show functions as units that are seasons. Like, that's why you have a unit of a season. Um, so it needs to work kind of on its own. And even if you ignore that logic, which is kind of arbitrary, watching the last 3 episodes, which are supposed to pay off and not actually pay off things that happened before, made those episodes worse. So it's
Yes.
like watching uh, things that happen are bad because they're not fulfilling things that happened earlier, right? So it's like okay, so it's not like everything's terrible this season, but basically everything that we're questioning whether it would work in the end didn't work, is what I'm trying to
Again,
say.
I'm even higher on the maidens than Dylan is, and I still think this is like a major problem.
So the maidens are an atrocity, and it's like the worst thing ever. Here's the thing. So this is like I like genuinely think the maidens this season function as maybe the worst single plot line I've ever seen in the history of TV in one show. Like it's just like they don't even try to pay it off at all.
Because the thing is, like, the concept isn't bad, the idea isn't bad, the execution is absolutely atrocious.
I think the concept is bad in that they're introducing this brand new mythology element in the middle of a season without even trying to integrate it. That's like
That's for me. That's the execution part of it. Like the concept
okay, if
isn't
you
the problem;
started with
it's
the
the
maidens
execution.
from the first part of the show, then okay.
Yeah,
Like yeah, I mean it's like a tropey thing, right? I don't
yeah.
it's fine. It's a fine concept. But and like I genuinely think they are going to pay the maidens off in a big way. Like I think our villain is the original Winter Maiden. And I
Yeah.
think Osmond is the original wizard. From a perspective of looking back from seasons 1 and 2, that's not fulfilling because we didn't know the
Right.
maiden story.
Yep.
But just at least it pays off something that's just glaring and what I think is the worst episode of the show. Fall.
And maybe it'll help when our main characters actually get to learn about the maidens, because as far as we know, Ruby and them have no idea what's going on.
Also, they don't know what maidens are. That's true.
Yeah, because it's like, because I think that's honestly would have been better, because it's part of the thing is like, I like Pyrrha, but, and I mean, Team Juniper, like, it's RWBY. It's RWBY. Like, that's the show. It's RWBY. It's Team RWBY. They're the main characters. And as much as they try and force them, to me, Team Juniper are not main characters. And when you have Pyrrha and you do something like this with Pyrrha, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's very unsatisfying when you take a character like Pyrrha and you try and introduce this new giant plot element.
So yeah,
And use her as the agent.
Let's go through all the long-term plot arcs this season and say whether they work or not. Actually, there might be one or two that do work. So let's talk Pyrrha, because that's a big one. The fall of Pyrrha was a recurring theme throughout the entire season. Mostly the second half, but you could argue the beginning too. And it pays off with with one of my favorite scenes of the show. Granted, like this season has great stuff.
Yeah.
We're just talking about it as a unit together. Pyrrha versus Cinder. That fight scene incredible.
Yes.
So it ends in that, and then Pyrrha dying. Well, how do you think this ultimately played as a arc in Volume 3?
I mean, we predicted it. It was very much something that we knew was going to happen.
They definitely like made it. They definitely foreshadowed it enough, right?
Yeah, they foreshadowed it enough. Like, it was like they telegraphed it, and I mean, it worked for Pyrrha. This is maiden stuff aside, like, just as Pyrrha's character and
Pyrrha's character arc in the season
and Pyrrha's farewell on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it did work in that it was telegraphed. Like, this wasn't a surprise to anyone. It's not like it didn't make sense. I mean, it's kind of, killing a character just to kill the character is kind of annoying. But I did say in a previous podcast that this was the only way Pyrrha's character could end satisfactorily, and they did that because they had been driving Pyrrha into the ground this entire season, and this was the only way Pyrrha could end. I think they did do it well. We had several episodes, even though I think Destiny is a terrible episode, we have these moments with Pyrrha, and this is all in character. This is all, like, very much Pyrrha, and Pyrrha, even though we might say that she didn't really have a choice, this was Pyrrha making decisions, and these are Pyrrha's mistakes or triumphs, depending on how you want to look at it, as Pyrrha, as a character. And she had, even though she chalked it all up to Destiny, Pyrrha maintained her agency throughout the season. And we get to the end, and Pyrrha sacrifices herself. She goes into this fight knowing she will die, and that's very in line with who Pyrrha is as a character, how she's been presented the entire show. I mean, it's even to Pyrrha's, like, character design. Like, Pyrrha is the warrior goddess. She is the protector, and everything she did made sense given the cards that she was dealt. And I think this did work in context of the maidens, but as Pyrrha as a character, this all worked.
Yeah, we don't need to get into the maidens and with Pyrrha. I think it's one of the better long-term arcs this season. I actually think I think there's good and bad. I think you hit on all the good there. I think overall it doesn't work. I genuinely think it's a bad arc because there's no reason that Pyrrha dies. Pyrrha just pointlessly dies in the end.
Dies.
So I think that ruins the entire thing. Even though they'd had some great moments, I
think, like, because I had said that, like, the only way this could end and it be okay with Pyrrha dying was because of the way the arc went. Like, if
just the way it's structured, that's where it's going, right?
Yeah, that was where it's structured. Pyrrha had to die, and in that way, it worked because if they had done anything else,
and I agree with that. Like, I think it's.
I'm not saying that I wanted Pyrrha to die, but, like, this is
no, there's good to it, and I think that there's individual components that are great, especially her fight scene at the end, and it's handled fine. But the big problem is that there's just no reason that she dies at the end. It makes no sense in the context. I mean, it makes logical plot faux sense in the episode, but there's just no, like, you look back, like, why did Pyrrha die? There's not really any reason. Why did she have to go challenge Cinder? There's no reason, other than her psychology, which I think was one of the better parts of the arc. So I think it's one of the better long-term plot arcs, but, like, it's not. Wouldn't necessarily characterize it as a good arc overall. Let's talk about, we talked about the tournament. I think we're clear on that. So let's again make clear that Weiss's character development, I think it's worse now than we thought it would be at the end of the season because we basically just stop after episode 5.
But granted, we stop, like, there is no character development for anyone this entire season.
Yeah. Weiss had some great stuff in the beginning of the season, and it pays off at the end, although not in a way that as much as we would have liked, right? But still, overall, I think Weiss wins the character of the season award.
Yes.
Of our
I
main
agree.
four. Of our main four.
Of our main four.
There's some. We'll get into Cinder. So let's talk about Cinder as a villain this season. We have a huge Cinder episode in episode 7, and we have her maybe dying at the end. Her plans not coming together. So I think there's a lot of sides with this Cinder long-term plot arc here. The bad is that what she's doing doesn't make sense and is arbitrary the entire time, and we don't really understand what she's doing. The good is that we see a lot of nice interactions with her other villains, especially in episode 7. And
Well, it's a weird, like, Cinder's character is so odd because at first we have no idea what she's doing. We're like, what is your motivation, Cinder? Why? And then we find out the maidens and that she is hungry for this power, which I think we discussed that, like, her lines in the episode were the best, like, Cinder has probably ever had.
And it's like, okay, and then we think that, okay, Cinder's going to be just like the power hungry and steal the main spider. But then later we learn that she's serving someone. So we never even really get a concrete read on her at the end. I
Yeah,
think.
it's very odd because we know she hungers for this power and she has this drive and like that's what she's going for, but then she's also serving a higher power and it's like what? Like I like Cinder as a character and I think she was a very interesting villain, but a lot of things just don't add up with Cinder.
So yeah, I like her character. I like a lot of the stuff she did this season. But it's how do you look back and think that this was a good arc? It was a bad arc overall. Cinder just really doesn't work. Like if you look at her actions, don't like they don't a lot of times make sense. They're just too it's too ambiguous. And
And of
she's
course, there are people who are like, well, you know, like the Joker's a villain and blah blah. The Joker actually makes sense in his like insanity, but Cinder, we don't have this kind of like we don't have any like. There's no substance to Cinder.
there's it she's just for show. She's
Yeah.
flashy. She's like all yeah. She's all flash and no substance, right? Like it's and a lot of people hate her for that. Like we should say like
Yeah.
there's a lot of really people who really don't like Cinder, and there's people who do. And
Yeah, she's very
I'm a Cinder fan. Like
yeah, like
I
I like
yeah.
Cinder, but she's a very superficial villain in character. Like there's not much to Cinder.
And I don't think Cinder's like the problem with the season, but I do think like I don't think this is one of the terrible arcs, but I do think it's a bad arc.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's part of it. And I mean, we talked about like the villain, like up into a certain point, we were like, we don't even understand what the villains are doing. Like, what's the point of the season? And like, we'd have all of these moments where it's like, ah, the villains have the upper hand, but we don't really care because Team RWBY has no idea anything's going on. There's no sense of urgency. And it's just, and then we get to the end of the season and we rush through these 3 episodes where a lot of stuff's happening, but then it's still like I don't get it. Like I still don't like why do we have to have the Grim? Like nothing makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's talk about okay, so there's other aspects of I was okay, that's Cinder's character. Let's talk about the villain plot, which kind of is intertwined. The
Yeah.
use of Grimm this season. Um it's not really a plot arc. I think it's more of
Well,
just a
honestly,
device.
this is like the most Grimless season.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I mean, yes, we go, you know, we get to the end of the season and there's like Grim everywhere, but like
For a while they're fighting each other now.
yeah, they're fighting each other. Like we don't really have Grim.
Yeah, I think that we don't agree with how the Grimm were used. That it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it's just kind of dumb.
And like they do interesting things with the Grim and like there's some like, you know, when we talked about how Roman died and how it actually speaks kind of to how like you can't control the Grim and like what they're doing really doesn't
I
make
think
sense.
Roman's death with the Grimm was like the best Grimm moment of the season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah.
Because it's like even the Grim Dragon, like okay, the Grim Dragon looks really cool and like oh man, it like drops Grim, but then it's like I don't care.
It's a Grimm spawn. Yeah, I don't care either.
Like oh, and it gets frozen. Like what? What's the point of this? Am I playing a video game? Like.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing that really I think is irksome about the season is now I've talked all the time. I love how Ruby's animated, and I don't want to watch Ruby. I want to play Ruby, which is very upsetting because I can't actually play the video game because it won't
But
run on my
it
computer.
is out there now though. So
But this season actually has like a video game plot because it doesn't make sense. It's like the Korra video game. The Korra video game plot is terrible. That's what is going on. Like this plot, like we have this villain plot, and like it's nonsensical. Like it nothing adds up. And you get to the end, you just have an epic fight. It's like, okay, where was the payoff?
yeah. Other aspects of the villain plot: the White Fang and Adam. This is one of the more repulsive ones of the season. So it's not really even a long term plot line. We just get see Cinder recruiting the White Fang in episode 7, and then there they are at the ends, and especially Adam's character. Basically, every defense I got of basically the Adam moment was the worst of the season. The Adam scene
Yes.
was
Hands down.
it's repulsive. It's probably the worst of the show. I mean, maybe John's
Yes.
plot arc is worse narratively, but
I
it's
think the single moment, this is by
the
far the
single
worst
moment is
moment
by
in
far
the
the worst.
entire
And
series.
basically all the pushback I got, other than idiot men saying it just didn't bother me when I was making a
Yeah.
social point. Not that you're an idiot if you said that. It's just you need to broaden your perspective.
That's not what it's
It's
about.
now it's yeah. I don't care if you didn't care. I care. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like it's and not that I care. My opinion matters more than you, but like your pushback to me should not be I don't care about this. I don't care that you don't care. Anyway, other than that, the other thing that I got, which was somewhat legitimate, was this will make sense. People were like, this will make sense when Adam becomes the main villain of the show. And I think that's like a natural reaction to that scene, which is like we have this character thrust into the spotlight. We know there's going to be a new main villain, and like him shooting down our main characters would be slightly more fulfilling later on if Adam becomes more important. However, Adam is not important at all in this season, so he is absolutely terrible in this. And also, it doesn't look like he's going to be super prominent later. Like he's
No, well,
not. He's not our main villain.
Well, that's the thing is like even being like, oh, he's gonna be our main villain. Like one, there's nothing to indicate that. Also,
Well,
like
for a while it was ambiguous who was above Cinder, so
yeah.
it played into that a little bit.
But then there's also like this whole like Adam's literally in the finale for like 30 seconds. And he does something terrible and then leaves. Like that's not okay. It doesn't matter if he's going to be the main villain later, which he's not.
Yeah.
It's just and that's the other thing like and we could even talk about Adam as an arc. Like okay, even though we haven't gotten concrete like for a long time there wasn't really any mention about Adam or like any concrete like we're going to get more of Adam. Blake's character, the Black trailer, all of this was hinting at Adam and Adam being important and like there is no payoff with Adam. We just get this mess.
Before
Adam is a total failure this season.
Before Heroes and Monsters, there were a lot of Adam fans apparently, and like that's before he was like showed up in the show really at all. And like I think that's kind of understandable. Like he was pretty cool in the Black trailer. He like appears cool ominously at the end. If you're an Adam fan, like this is not like you should not be anymore because this is not the character. It's a different character from the one you were a fan of before. His entrance into the season is just a completely different person than we previously saw, and it's just now he's not even like really a character. He's just kind of this blob who is like apparently all powerful and can cut down our heroes for no reason. Even to some people, more infuriating than this, not for me, but to some people, was the use of the White Fang. You touched on this. I think I was too enraged at Adam to kind of see how bad this was, but the White Fang's kind of moral message is completely thrown out this season.
Like they went from like Blake's arc in season 2 was brilliant.
Volume
2.
Okay, what'd you do in Volume 2?
Well, Blake, like, the struggle with, I think I'm right? Like, Blake, when Blake runs away, and they have to go, and,
I think that was 1. I think it's season 1.
This one? I'm pretty sure.
There's some stuff in season 2, too, but, like, the whole Blake is a faunus thing happens in season 1.
Sorry, in my defense, I watched them both together.
Oh.
I literally went from book 1 to book 2 and watched it all.
Yes. So there's a lot of like it's bad for Blake's character because she's built up as like this moral character and caring about things.
Like we build up this idea of like we have this movement, and yes, Blake has separated herself from it because she doesn't like how radical they are, but like they still stand for something. They stand for faunus rights and like. We have a lot of like there's a lot of parallels.
And it's like even if they're doing it in an extreme way, they still have like a purpose, right? Like
they actually have a purpose. They're actually like they're a social movement. Like they are a group.
But not in this season when they're just reduced to an army at the end of.
Yeah, they literally just become a force of evil and like they're just violent. And it's like what's the point of this? And obviously we know like the context of this is that Cinder threatened them into it. But that's the thing is like we completely like ruined the White Fang.
Yep, we did. And like, if your response to that is Cinder threatens them, that's not what our point is. Our point is you could have just not done that plot, and you could have just had them.
Because honestly, the White Fang, like that was a really interesting part of the show. It was an interesting part of Blake's character. It was an interesting facet of the universe that we have this conflict with Faunus, and it was very nuanced and interesting. And I mean, it has a lot to do with like our world, and like it has like there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And then we take this and just ruin it.
It was a good plot. It's one a lot of things have done. Fantasy shows have done with like
Yeah.
elves and stuff like that. Like it's always like the minority fantasy race. Like and it was handled really well here in the first two
Yeah.
seasons, and then not anymore. So
And they just ruin it. And
uh,
there was absolutely no reason to do so.
yeah. Speeding up a little bit, Yang's fall this season. Uh, I didn't identify a purpose by the end of the
No.
season why she's being picked
It's
on.
even more pointless than Pyrrha dying.
Yeah, I mean, she just like gets blamed for all of this, and I guess it's like bringing Yang back to Earth because she's too cocky, but then she like gets her hand cut off.
Yeah.
We're punishing Yang for nothing. So
Well, that's the thing is like now there is value when you have a character and you break them to do something else with them, but the thing is like there has to be a point and a purpose and like
and we haven't seen that point yet.
and it has to be
Presumably they're going
gradual.
somewhere, but we haven't
Yeah.
seen that yet.
But it has to be gradual. No, we have like literally Team RWBY like isn't in the show. Like
Also, it was just Yang is going from like yeah, she went from
like
being awesome in a fight to just cut down twice without and yeah,
there's no point.
it was just badly handled. Yep. Ruby's arc. I think this is one of the good ones. I mean, Ruby's arc is always weird because she's just like the focus of the show, but I think she like continues to like gain more more confidence in helping people and more abilities. She's not that much different from previous seasons, but
we
at the
just
end,
see more like we just see RWBY kind of blossom. It's not
yeah,
really
Ruby
like
blossoming, and then at the end, like having white angel wings come out of her eyes. So,
yes.
I think that they do a decent job building up to the Duax, even if it's Duaxes are never good, but this is the character who you would have it to, the character
Yes.
who's blossoming the entire show. So I think that was decent. Like
Yeah.
at one arc that was actually decent. Blake didn't really have arc this season, so
Sigh.
no, nothing to comment on there.
It's upsetting.
We didn't mention this during the Pyrrha discussion. I think Arcos, John and Pyrrha this season was actually a good arc.
I mean, it is. I do think it is a good arc in that like
I think the Arcos this season was much better handled than the previous
yes,
seasons.
and it like grounds Pyrrha.
Yeah, it does. I think it's just good across the board. I mean, neither of us ship it, and we kind of hit
No.
John, but like I think it was
Yes.
good across the board.
They handle it very well,
Yeah.
and it works. And who doesn't love a tragic love story?
I guess. I mean, it would be 10 times better if it was the reverse, but
Yes, same.
well, the character we dislike having this stuff happen to him. Okay, last thing, the maidens. I've been ranting about this a little bit already, but the maidens introduced terribly arbitrarily in episode 6, and it just goes nowhere.
There's no like we have the stuff with Pyrrha.
It's
and
relevant.
It's
It's relevant for 2 episodes, and then it's not anymore.
like, that's not. And then we get to the end of the season, and it's like Ruby's not even a maiden. What?
There's one
Why?
maiden. You introduce 4 maidens. There's one that's relevant this season. It's not clear why they have to be a group of 4. It's just one fall maiden, and it doesn't really pay off in the finale at all. And it's just really bad.
Yep.
All right.
And like it's just pointless.
All right. Let's talk
And
about.
then like our main ends up being evil. Like what?
Yep. I mean, I guess. I mean, now we have I guess Cinder's now the maiden, but then Cinder's dead? Question mark. So maybe the maiden.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
Cinder's dead, the maidens don't matter at all. But it's like
Exactly.
But it's
but
like, but
gross.
like it's like if Cinder died, then she saw Ruby before her death. So
Yeah.
then Ruby gets her power. So now Ruby has angel wings, like is like gray eyes, and like is the fall maiden now.
So Ruby is just gonna kill everyone basically.
Ruby's just like the super avatar now, right?
Super avatar, the extra avatar.
So yeah, that's just a colossal failure. Okay, let's talk about our episode rankings. Then we'll evaluate the season as a whole. Basically, I'm a big fan of tiered rankings. I think tiers make more sense than just arbitrarily ranking things number wise. I've provided Delaney with 3 main tiers: good, okay, and bad, and then great and terrible. If you think any fall into them at the top and bottom. Delaney, what was your number 1 episode of the season?
Okay, this is in the Amaze Balls tier.
Which is the great tier. Okay.
No, it's Amaze Balls and then it's great.
Okay, sure.
I have an extra tier.
Okay.
Dylan actually let me have fun with the tiers this time. And I have lessons learned.
So your number 1 episode is lessons learned.
Which is
episode
the Weiss episode.
4, the Weiss character development episode.
Yes,
okay.
Lessons learned.
So let's talk about that quickly. This is an episode where we have a fight happening near the second half of the Emerald, Mercury, Coco. Yeah, so actually, no, that's the beginning of the fight. And then we have some awesome Weiss stuff happening too.
Like it's just the Weiss. Like that's like
yeah. So
it was really hard ranking episodes because like,
there's a lot of good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had this episode. I agree the Weiss stuff is great, but because of the bad tournament stuff also happening here. I had this episode as number 5 in my good tier.
Interesting.
So this is my 5th ranked episode. I can see why it'd be your number 1 because I do think you could I do think the white stuff was the best of the season. So
like it's just the best, and like honestly, that's just the standout thing for this season for me is Weiss.
Were there other episodes in your top tier?
No.
Okay, so that was a tier above. Okay.
It's just lessons learned.
So my top tier was the great tier. You'll have other episodes there.
Yeah.
I, of course, no surprise here, had beginning of the end. By the way, just ranking these is the only time I remembered that we had a beginning of the end, and then we had
Into
the
the beginning. It was
I didn't
very
even
confusing.
I didn't even remember that, but yeah. I said when it aired, beginning of the end, episode 7, our Cinder Baxter episode was the best of this, not only the best of the season, but the best of the show. And I stand by that. It's clearly the number 1 episode of the season for me, and still the number 1 episode of the show. Where did you have that ranked?
In my good tier.
In your good tier.
It is the top of my good tier.
What an incorrect ranking, Delaney.
Well, I have end of the beginning higher. Like I like that more than beginning of the end.
Yeah. So what was your number 2 episode?
It's Brawl in the Family. Not shocking.
It's Brawl in the Family, which is the other Weiss episode, right?
Yeah, it's just because of Weiss. The reason it's below it is because of the Crow and Winter fight. Even though I like that fight, we didn't really like Crow at that moment, and
this was our Crow versus Winter fight.
And it's better looking back on it because like we like Crow, but
we also
at the time, it was like, what is going on?
also had the scene in Crow's office discussing a bunch of plot stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, this was not the Weiss episode. No, yeah.
I just had it. I had it because of Winter.
5, 4, yeah. 5. This was not a Weiss. 4 and 5 were our Weiss episodes, and
yeah,
Winter, yeah. So I don't see what's particularly good here about this one. I mean, I also like Winter, but I think that fight, while at the time was one of the best of the season, was quickly outmatched. I have this in the bad tier at number 10. But I
only have one in the bad tier.
I could see it being in the okay tier. Yeah, you rank things too high, but continue.
You can't say that. This is all opinion. And then I have
no, definitively too high.
It's Brawl in the Family, Into the Beginning.
Okay, so let's talk about Into the Beginning, our final episode. This was my number 2 episode of the season.
Like and again, like we all know I hate ranking things. That is a well-established fact. I hate it. And honestly, I could probably flip Into the Beginning or It's Brawl in the Family. Honestly, this would probably change if I actually rewatched all the episodes.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do a rewatch. Like, this was just literally me looking at the wiki and being like, oh, that's what happened in this episode.
Okay, let's go. Let me do me through mine, and then you say where it was on yours, because I probably spent slightly more time on it. But yeah, the finale, I think the finale is my number 2 episode of the season. I think it's in the good tier. The problem is the first half of this episode is great, and then the second half is bad. So, like, where do you rank it, right? That being said, even though the second half is
that's
bad,
part of the problem with ranking all these episodes, because there are good moments in these episodes, but really none of the episodes are like 100% great.
Basically, for me, except for End of the beginning of the ends, episode 7 I thought was all good, and then Fall, which I thought was all bad. Everyone was a mixed bag. So it's just like which weighs out over the other for me.
And I'm higher on Fall than you are. Fall is in my good tier. It's at the bottom of my good tier.
But that is inconscionable. That ranking, I will say.
That's the thing. I'm higher on Dylan on some things than on other things we agree.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, looking back on this, Delaney is like, she's been like all critical, but she actually like likes this stuff better. Apparently.
Well, the thing is like we talk about it, and my problem is the season overall. It's not really the individual episodes. Because my episodes are ranked fairly high. Granted, if I did a rewatch, I'd probably be like, these are bad. But like looking back on them, they're not as annoying as like the season overall.
Yeah, I mean, I only have 3 in bad or worse, so I
only have 1 in bad. I don't even have anything in terrible.
I have fallen terrible, obviously. So yeah, the finale, I think that it's for me, it's the second best episode of the season overall. Like, at least it's intriguing. We have one of the best scenes of the season with Cinder, Cinder and Pyrrha, and like more importantly, there's just nothing dragging it down. Like the second half is not good, but at the same time, there's nothing awful. Like for me, my 3rd episode is Heroes and Monsters.
My 4th is Heroes and Monsters.
Yeah, so Heroes and Monsters. If you take out the Adam scene, it's in the great tier, but with the Adam scene, it weighs it down. So Heroes and Monsters is in my great. Like our tiers are just different. Yeah. 4 I have Destiny, which you don't like. So
I know I have Destiny in my meh.
Yeah. So we disagreed on this episode. during the podcast on it. It's a very like quiet before the storm type episode. I think everything's solid. I think there's nothing like here's the, like when episodes have nothing terrible, then they move up my list because there's just really nothing here for me to super complain about. I think everything's fine. You could argue that there's just nothing like stand out about it.
That's for me. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can forgive more terrible things if there's like really good stuff, but if it's just meh, it's meh. So that's where Destiny is in meh.
5, I had lessons learned, which we already discussed.
Yeah.
Purely in the good tier because of the white stuff. Everything else is bad about it. 6, I had PvP, and this is my okay
I
tier
had
now.
I
Where do you have
even-
PvP?
PvP, like, so what you were talking about is in your good tier was in my great tier, and then in my good tier it's
This is
beginning of
my
the end.
okay. This is my okay tier. So where do you have PvP?
It's the second in my good tier. It's after beginning of the
Okay,
end.
so that's the equivalent tier for you. Yeah, this episode is just very meh overall.
Yeah.
I mean the Pyrrha and Penny stuff. Nope.
Yep.
We've established that once people die, I completely forget their names. So
Yep, that's true.
Penny better be coming back, by the way,
Please.
or else the season moves down even more.
Yeah, even though it just gets worse.
That scene was good, but everything else is meh. Okay. Never miss a beat. I have it
Same.
7 as in the okay tier. Yeah. Again, white stuff good, everything else meh. And like we were like I actually think we liked this episode. Looking back, it's not as good for me, but
we liked this episode.
this is the episode where we really diverged from everyone on. Like we were like, this is good, and everyone else was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I think the fight scene still is okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
8, I have round 1.
I have Dylan. Why is our list the same?
I mean, these are the meh episodes. Like this is the first episode. It was okay. It was fine.
I have round 1.
I have Battle of Beacon at 9.
I have Fall and then Battle of Beacon.
Well, that's invalid. But Battle of the Beacon, yeah, we podcast on. We're like, this episode was okay. It was nothing special, nothing terrible in Battle of the Beacon. But there's also nothing very good.
Yeah.
I have in my bad tier now. I have It's Brawl in the Family. We talked about that. I have second from the bottom, New Challengers.
New Challengers is the only one in my bad tier because that episode's terrible.
New Challengers is clearly one of the worst of the season.
Also, Destiny is under Battle of Beacon because I don't like that episode, but we already talked about where yours is.
So New Challengers, basically the bad parts of the season are Fall and episodes 2 and 3. Like, and 4 and 5 also half of them are also actively bad, but the white stuff redeems them.
Yes.
Episode 2 just is pointless fighting the entire time. It's also the Emerald episode, and he's the worst in this episode. So, also this episode's actively bad. We also have Crow just watching the tournament being absurd in this one.
Yes,
yeah, this was one of the worst of the show, for sure. And then I have Fall in my terrible tier. And if you want to know why, you can listen to that podcast. And,
yes.
Yeah, so if you want, send me an ask if you want either of us to send out. Either of us can ask if you want either of us to post our lists. But there you go. Let us know what you thought the best and worst are, what your episode ranking would be, et cetera, et cetera. Looking at my list, I have 5 episodes in good or better, 3 episodes in bad or worse, and 4 episodes in okay. So it's overall slightly balanced, positive, but that's not a very good season ranking part by part. So that's the thing. Like, there's 2 ways to evaluate a season. You can evaluate it like as a whole. What are the recurring like plot lines we've talked about, which most of them were bad, and then you can say it's a sum of its parts. And as a sum of its parts, I think it's better, but still not a good season based on our rankings.
Yes.
My rankings in general way positive. Like, I generally like episodes I see, and there's just like there's only 5 episodes which I thought were net positive. Like, that's not very good.
Yeah, like it's like, and even though like based on my rankings I'm a little bit higher than Dylan is, but I also like my tier system is a bit different than Dylan's.
We have similar sentiments about part by part,
Yes.
regardless of the arbitrary tiers. Yeah.
Yeah, like the tiers are just, I don't like using tiers.
Like, you could argue that PvP and Never Miss a Beat should be in good, but I think round 1, Battle of Beacon, for me, Brawl in the Family, New Challengers, Fall, like those are clearly net negative.
Yeah.
So
Well, I like Fall and like Dylan, but
you need to repent for this. Clearly,
like I told you, I liked how it looked.
Clearly
I told you
incorrect
that's
opinion.
why.
Clearly,
I told
clearly
you I liked it.
Okay,
We
so
had this, listen to the podcast, y'all will know.
Clearly incorrect. Okay, what do we think of the season as a whole now? It's basically big problem is, like, seriously, nothing works long term in the season.
Like, all of our plot threads just
There is one plot
die.
thread I should mention, which was kind of the overall theme of Fall. We speculated fairly early on, before I saw anyone else, that the season would end as like a negative reset, where they wouldn't be in the school anymore. Everything would be ruined, and we have to start anew. And we are starting anew with like a new
Yep.
team and a new journey. And the reason we're able to speculate is because they like I actually think this is a good thing. Like they were working towards this the entire season, and I
Yes.
think in a season as like a negative trajectory for our heroes and everyone associated with good in the world, I think that it really works thematically in that
It
regard.
it really did, like, there were several things about this season we don't like, and there were several things about this season that was not executed well. But the fact that none of this came as a shock, and that everything that happened was like we saw this coming. We saw this
Like the end of the season
fall
is
of Team
fairly
RWBY.
shocking given like the seasons 1 and 2. Like
Yeah,
everything changes, and yet it
yeah.
was not. It didn't seem shocking.
No, like
They
which is
correctly built this up.
yeah, which is good because I mean you don't want to be like, where the heck did this come from? What am I watching? It was done. This was done well. This, we're heading like we're just racing towards destruction, and that it was very well telegraphed. It was very well foreshadowed. This was done well,
It was
and
done
I
well.
yeah, and I think and like we predicted this very early on.
Yeah. So, as the sum of its parts, it's okay, not great. As looking at overall themes, it's not good. Most things are bad. But here's the thing: like, I'm not gonna sit here and say this is an actively bad season of television overall. And here's the reason: it's purely because it was entertaining enough. There's like, for me, the cardinal sin of television is if it's boring, and there were a few episodes in the first half, and that's why this first half is really, really bad looking back, that were boring because the tournament matches
Just
are
exhaustingly
just
boring.
exhaustingly boring. So I think we were there for a little bit, but we get out of it. Even if fall is awful, 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 at least like we're doing something. And that's the thing. Like,
Well, that was the thing. We finally got to fall, and we were like, we hate it, but at least they're doing something because we were like, where are we going? What's the point?
and
What
I
am I
think, yeah, and I
watching?
think that that like praise is nullified a little bit because they ultimately don't go anywhere with it. But
Right.
it's still like it's better than, and to a certain extent, even though it's a worse episode, it's better than the tournament stuff before it. But here's the thing, like RWBY, and this is why like it's genuinely one of the shows I'm like the most fan of, like I'm the biggest fan of, and that's because it's like it has still like the season still had super interesting characters. It still had the incredible character models, like the great action scenes, even, and that's one of the, by the way, one of the praises about this, the one of the, like they rebounded really well in the fight scene department.
Yes,
It was
definitely.
bad in the beginning, and we got some great ones at the ends, and like they were able to pull it off, which genuinely surprised me. So that's another positive. But like even through all these bad things, narrative wise, Ruby's still like an entertaining show and one that I like watching, and one that I care about the
And
characters
it's
for.
gorgeous to
It's
watch.
gorgeous, and I just like, I even if they're going in bad places, like just doing going. This is the type of show that probably needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
I like like I think that it didn't need to be. I think that after season 1, we could have kept it as a quieter show. We could have been super focused on our main characters. Obviously, Monty never wanted to go there. Which, so given that we're going in this direction, the season is a fine continuation of that. I really would like us to get back to the roots of season
Yeah.
1 and focus more on our main four, but that's always my criticism of RWBY, always.
Yes,
And it's
always.
not
Yeah.
just the season, is season 2 as well. So, like, it's like tons of things to criticize, but still overall,
Which
like,
this new beginning that we're getting, like even though we just have RWBY because they've scattered Team RWBY to the
at least
winds,
it's like intriguing and it's going to be
well,
exciting.
and at least we're trimming down our characters a little
That's
bit.
true,
Like,
and killing people off means less people to worry about. So,
yes, like thank God because it's like,
although we need to bring Penny back, so
yeah, no, we need Penny back immediately. Like right now, she needed to be back like
what's going to
yesterday.
happen in season 4 prediction is the rest of Team Juniper is going to separate from Ruby. Ruby is going to like resuscitate Penny, and they're just going to go on a big Ruby and Penny gay adventure together, and that's how it's going to
And get the rest of Team RWBY back.
eventually. But first, we need time for some nuts and
No,
bolts. But then we can get.
that's fine. That's fine.
That's my prediction. Okay, I
I'm
think
fine.
that's officially my secondary ship. By the way, nuts and bolts.
I
After
mean, I'm gonna ship Ladybug until I die, and it's never gonna happen.
that's like
But
the. I think that's maybe the one that's the furthest from happening. I don't know though.
it is. But I'm gonna go down with it, and it's okay. Because I don't dislike any of the rest of the Team RWBY ships.
Oh,
They're all
okay.
A
This
plus.
shouldn't have been an afterthought. this show conditions you to not think about it. But another huge criticism is this is another show without any with
Also,
just
we were
we're promised a gay
promised.
character, and that has not happened yet.
We're at
This was
RWBY.
another season with just straights, no gays, and
Very irritating.
no non-straights, and a show with 4 female leads, very shippable leads. They did not actually go anywhere with
Where are
it.
my
They
gays?
also you could argue that they queer baited this season. You honestly could,
They did.
which is the worst of anything we've mentioned. If true, I wouldn't say that it's a definitive,
Yeah,
but that you
don't
could
really.
argue that they've done that. You could argue they've been doing that the entire show.
It's true.
And that's really not good. I think there's going to be a gay character makes more sense now that we learned that there's a 20 season plan. It's like
Yes.
at somewhere in our long season, like oh my
It's
goodness.
season 20, the last episode.
Yeah, no, it's awful. One positive though I think is kind of Ruby maintaining as kind of an this like asexual presence on the show.
If John will keep his grubby hands away from her,
Yeah, which we're worried about, and I genuinely think they're
please.
100% gonna sexualize Ruby at some point. But functioning as an asexual lead to the show, I think Ruby's great. Like
A plus.
I genuinely love that representation. And like here's the great part. Like this is actually a character where you can't default them as straight because she has shown
Nope.
genuine no
Zero.
romantic or sexual interest.
Zero.
Like you
She's just Ruby.
she's just Ruby like and the problem is like it's not them actually trying to have representation, it's just them like Ruby is like the child, right? So it's them treating it like that, which is
Please
good,
protect her.
which is
Please.
fine on its own, protecting like the kid, but
Please. Just
it's
Ruby pure.
I do think context wise like there's no non-straight people on the show. Yes there
Yep.
is. Ruby's not straight, right? Like she's
Yeah.
just asexual, so that's cool. And even
Yes.
though I ship Ruby with Weiss, like if that never happens, I'd be fine if she never if she's still
Yeah.
asexual,
As
but
long as we have an actual gay character who isn't just some random character.
who's just the guy on that team, right? Who we thought that's
Yeah.
where, which doesn't seem like that's where they're going at least. So good. Okay. Other things about the season overall. You can think of random predictions for season 4. This is wrapping up our Ruby coverage for a while.
We're gay. We're
Yeah, I mean, I looking to season 4.
also I really, really, really need like I do not want this super long Ruby separation. We literally had a season where we didn't even really have Team Ruby. Like this is gonna get old real fast.
Yeah, no, they need to get Weiss and Blake back on board and do something with Yang's arc.
Yeah, with Yang, like
If
this
they're
is
going to
getting
separate Yang
irritating.
and have her as this awesome recovery arc, then I'm fine with that. But yeah, just don't write Weiss and Blake off the show. That's
Yeah,
not
like this is especially since they already wrote Blake off the show. Like
no.
we're gonna not have Blake for a season, then we're gonna kill her. Great.
No, they did terribly with Blake's character this season.
I am so irritated. Like that's probably for me the biggest. Okay, no, it's not. It's because Adam is the worst thing that happened. But granted,
But
that's also tied to
that's
the
part of it.
terrible
Yeah,
handling of Blake's character this season.
yeah. No, it was really bad.
Like honestly, until this season, Blake was arguably one of the like it's really Weiss and Blake are the more developed, more characterized characters, and we have a lot with them. And then we get Weiss, which I loved Weiss' development this season. Like it was great. Obviously, it was just 2 episodes. It was kind of upsetting, but it was brilliant. And then we take Blake, who has also had wonderful characterization the entire series, and then she's not even on the show. And then when she's finally on the show, they do terrible things to her.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of bad this season. We complained about a lot. I'd like to give closing props to Carrie and Miles for producing a quality season of the show given these really bad circumstances. I think that they did a lot better than I imagined. Like as disappointed as I was with everything that happened, I like genuinely didn't think it'd be this good. Especially
Yeah.
them continuing the animation and action scenes up to this extent. I'm like genuinely impressed with the two of them, especially Carrie. I think because of he stepped into a lot of the Monty role here, and yeah, I mean, I know I criticize with love to a certain extent. When the Adam scene happened, that genuinely enraged me. But like for the most part, I am criticizing with love here, and like I just it's frustrating because I think the two and especially Miles, like because he's the main writer at this point, have a lot of potential with the narrative, and we're falling back into similar things that they are doing wrong a lot. And not that I know better, but it's looking back, and it's easier to look back than to
Yeah.
their position in writing, but looking back, there's a lot of not great stuff here, and I do hope it works better as an overall unit as the show. And still a big fan of the show and genuinely excited for season 4 because I do think, like we said, the overall theme and trajectory of the season
we have a clean slate.
Was well handled, and we now have a really interesting place to start at. So looking forward to see what they do. Great job, the two of you and the entire RWBY crew. It's a pretty incredible production for a non Hollywood TV production to have a internet show this good. That's one of the things that drew me to it. It's genuinely like a great, very good animated show, and seeing it continue to thrive like this is very encouraging. So
yes, definitely.
Great job, all of you, and thanks for listening to our RWBY coverage this season. Not the crew because they're not listening, but all you fans. And I know you probably disagreed with a lot of what we said today, and feel free to voice that in the comments.
Of course,
I will respond in with what you said, whatever, thematically. And I don't know, check out other stuff. Maybe if we get RWBY nostalgic, we'll do something at some point. I don't know what that. Maybe we could have like a RWBY shipping podcast specifically or something like that, right?
And we haven't. This is our first time actually covering RWBY. We could go back and do.
We could go back and do some season 1 and 2 look back. Yeah, slightly. I don't know how interested I'll be in that because the show's very. That's the thing. Like the show is very in the moment for me. Like it's very much like being a part of like watching it week to week. So. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Dylan Hysen, that's Delaney Stovall, overlyanimated.com, patreon.com/overlyanimated. If you enjoyed our RWBY discussions this season, and there genuinely were a lot of you, even though a lot of our feedback was negative, these are some of our most listened to podcasts. So
we know you're out there.
You're out there. If you like this, consider becoming a patron and supporting us. Shayna, Mitch, Cordell, Beatrice, Nate, Andy, Jamie, and Rachel, our current patrons, aka Hannah, Fever, Mitch, Cordell, University, Beatrice, James, Buzziker, Mailman, and Rachel Rose.
You also can have a cool nickname.
Shout out to Shayna and Andy, who are the patrons who listen to our RWBY coverage.
Yes.
We've had some great discussion on the show on our patron exclusive group on Facebook all season long. And if you want to be a part of that, you could become a patron. So,
yep.
Overlyanimated.com, check it out all there. Thanks for listening. Genuinely, thanks for listening, guys. I know it was a little bit rough with some of the comments and stuff this year, but like I genuinely do appreciate everyone listening to our coverage of the show. And this is like I genuinely was worried about like how we'd be received and stuff, and like it's such an established fandom, and I don't care about that as much anymore because I don't know, it's the fandom inherently has not as negative parts to it, but
yes,
inherently all fandoms do. So
except Ladybugs.
I don't know. I feel more legitimate in my coverage of the show now because I feel like we're doing something that no one else is covering this show with the type of perspective we are. So shrug. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Delaney, for co-hosting RWBY podcasts with me this year.
Of course.
Yeah, cool. And thanks for listening, guys. Let me know what you thought. Bye.
Bye.